Hey, it's Rabbi Greg, and welcome to an experiment that I'm going to be trying over the next few months called Torah Tuesday. So, the way this is going to work is on Tuesdays, I will post a video where you will get to see how I go about constructing a source sheet for doing Torah study. So, we'll be reviewing the weekly Torah portion on a website called Safaria, and I'll start clicking through and looking at commentaries. We'll rabbit hole and we'll just see where it takes us. And if I see interesting things, I'm going to add them to something called a source sheet so that on the following Saturday at 9 a.m. Mountain Time, we can get together and explore and discuss the Torah. So if you've ever been to a Torah study, you might want to know what is the rabbi's preparation like before the Torah study. Well, you're going to get to see it here. And eventually I'll start streaming these and you can ask questions and comment and participate. So let's jump right in. This week, our Torah portion is called Beshelach. It is where a lot of the big stuff happens. It is after the plagues, it is after the Israelites have started leaving Egypt. And what we are going to get to is the crossing of the Sea of Reeds, which is more commonly known as the crossing of the Red Sea. So, well, first we'll start just looking at, what's in the Torah portion for the week. Okay, so it's saying when Pharaoh let the people go, the divine didn't lead them the short route to the promised land because God said the people may have a change of heart when they see war and return to Egypt. So clearly, this is foreshadowing a lot of the conflict that's going to take place, but God is a little bit worried. So this is kind of interesting. This is something that I might want to add to the source sheet. I have created this source sheet, Bishalach Torah Tuesday, so we'll just add it to the sheet. Okay, and then if we go over to Beshelach Torah Tuesday and we refresh, boom, we see that this chunk of the Torah is saved. So so God led them to the Sea of Reeds. Okay, we'll add that one as well. I think that could be an interesting addition. We'll see. And then they went along, they carried the bones of Joseph. They walked, and then they they were following this pillar of fire. And then we get to this place. God said to Moses, tell the Israelites to turn back and encamp uh, right by the sea. So, um, because Pharaoh will say of the Israelites, they're astray in the land, the wilderness has closed in on them. So it's like God is setting a trap here. Is it a trap for the Israelites? Is it a trap for the Egyptians? And then God says, I will stiffen Pharaoh's heart and he will pursue them that I may gain glory through Pharaoh and all his hosts. And the Egyptians shall know that I am the divine. So this is, I think, gaining glory. This is kind of foreshadowing the big Cecil B. DeMille moment, the crossing of the Red Sea. Okay, so I've added all of these. We'll kind of pick the ones we want to focus on a little bit more later. Okay, so Pharaoh says, let's get going. He orders his chariot. He took a bunch of chariots. Um, God stiffened Pharaoh's heart, and the Egyptians started giving chase, and then the Egyptian army overtook them by the sea. So God maneuvered the Israelites to be trapped with their backs against the sea. Um, okay, so then as Pharaoh drew near, the Israelites caught sight of the Egyptians advancing upon them. Greatly frightened, the Israelites cried out to the divine. And they said to Moses, Was it for want of graves in Egypt that you brought us to die in the wilderness? What have you done to us, taking us out of Egypt? Now, this is interesting to me because here they're crying out for help, but then here they're complaining. And then it's like, see, we told you so. We don't want to leave Egypt. Let us just serve here so we don't have to go die in the wilderness. But Moses said to the people, have no fear. Stand by and witness the deliverance which the divine will work for you. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you will never see again. So these are also interesting, and I'm going to start digging in deeper. But first, let's add them to the sheet. Okay, we told you so. And Moses is saying, have some courage here. All right, so the first one I want to dig deeper on is this one here. As Pharaoh draws near, the Israelites caught sight of the Egyptians advancing upon them. Greatly frightened, the Israelites cried out to Adonai. So when I first get ready to start digging deeper, I look at the trope and the cantillation, and I see some really interesting things going on here. So I will probably in the Torah study spend some time explaining what's happening. But let's see what the commentators have to say. So the first commentator I always look at is Rashi. Rashi was in what later became France around the 11th century. Um, and he talks about all kinds of things. And what he's saying here is um, he is noticing the tense, something called he feel. Now, this is a little bit of a deeper cut, but basically it's like it's not really as Pharaoh drew near. Rashi's saying it would be more appropriate to say Pharaoh was caused to come near, or Pharaoh caused himself to come near. He forced himself. It said that God hardened his heart, but somehow this he feel, this extra yud here, it's telling us something really interesting. So I think that's kind of cool. Um, I am going to add this to the sheet. Okay, once more, we go back to the Torah Tuesday. We go back to the commentary on Rashi. So this is a little guardian angel of Egypt. I don't see myself fashioning a story because I'm interested in God has set this trap and who is it that God is trapping? And what are sort of the lessons that we might learn from just this spot? It's before the seas parted. It's kind of like if you're in the movie, the drama's building and everybody's coming up. So let's see what commentators have to make of this moment, okay? Let me get some more drink as we start to look at Ibn Ezra, 12th century commentary on Spain. So here, um, Ibn Ezra is saying this he feel it's about Pharaoh was causing his camp to draw near. Maybe he had to force them um, because they just saw all these 10 plagues and the death of the firstborn. And now you want us going after these people? He's like, I'm Pharaoh, I'm a god, I'm going to force you to do it. So let's add it to the sheet. Okay, we go back to our commentary again. Rambam is another great source. And you'll notice these English here, um, these ENs, that tells you it's in English, whereas like this one is only in Hebrew. Ramban is Nachmanides, fantastic commentator, often disagrees with Rashi. So it's interesting what he has to say. And oh man, he has got a lot to say. I don't think I have the strength to kind of go through all of this. But the all in caps, that's kind of quoting um, quoting the English, so or kind of sort of quoting the Hebrew. So it's like the children were afraid of Israel were afraid, they cried out. And because there were no graves, you've taken us to die in the wilderness. So he says it does not appear logical that the people who are crying out to God to help them should at the same time protest um, the deliverance and everything that God did for them. The correct interpretation, therefore, is that there were conflicting groups. And the scripture relates all that they were doing. So we see a little footnote. So, what's this all about? So, oh, here is a reference to something. It says um, that there were four groups, there were four responses. God trapped them here by the edge of the Red Sea, and people split into four different commentaries. So I think that is really interesting. So we're gonna keep this for sure. I might cut it down for the final source sheet. Um, One group cried out, and another denied that God and did not denied God and Moses. And they said it would have been better had they not been saved from Egypt. So it was with reference to this group that it was written, they were rebellious at the sea, even at the Red Sea. Okay, what's that all about? That is from Psalms 106. Okay, so there's a couple interesting things here going on. I'm not even going to read through the rest of this right now. I'll look at it later. What I'll probably do is just cut out most of this in the final source sheet, but I'm going to add it for now. Okay, so let's go back to the source. Um, and where was this? They were rebellious. So what's going on with this psalm here? So I want to go to Psalms 106.7. So I'm going to click here. Okay, now this is what I call rabbit holing. We're just getting into the text and the commentators, and all of a sudden they start talking about each other. So here is Psalm 106. Hallelujah, praise God who is good. Um, who can tell God's mighty acts? Be mindful, take note of me when you deliver them, that I may enjoy your prosperity. We have sinned like our ancestors. We have gone astray. We have done evil. Okay, so um, our ancestors in Egypt did not perceive your wonders. They did not remember your abundant love, but rebelled at the sea of reeds. Okay, so I like that. We are going to add this to the sheet too, because one of the cool things about the Psalms is the Psalms, which are part of the Jewish Bible, but they were written later and they are commentating on things that happened in the Torah. Okay, so I'm going to close this windows. Um, um, Yet they were saved. So even these people that were complaining, they were saved. So I'm going to keep this as well. Because what we've seen here is in the time of the Psalms, they're focusing on even these complainers were redeemed. And doesn't that make God a cool entity? All right. Um, oh, something weird has happened here. In Safaria, you can see the English or the Hebrew or the English and Hebrew, and it has switched it only to the translation. I want to go back with the Hebrew though. We may not you even use the Hebrew here, but I like to see them both. Okay, so there's some interesting things that happened just from that one verse. We found some really interesting references. What if we look at like verse 11? Okay, we go from this verse. Now we're going to see a different set of commentary. Um, okay, that's not so interesting. Did you bring us out of there? It's just kind of it's interesting, like Rashi was French and he wrote so much that he's actually studied by French scholars who want to understand the 11th century French language. And here you see this little note about the old French, but Ibn Ezra, um, okay, these are kind of some grammatical things, not so interesting. Ramban didn't comment on it. What about this guy Sforno? What did he have to say? Even if Pharaoh and his army will not provoke a battle, the mere fact that they block our path will result in our death from thirst and starvation. Okay, so this is kind of interesting. It sort of illustrates the trap that was set again. Their backs are against the Sea of Reeds, but and in front of them is the Egyptian army. What, it's doomed. They're done. What are they, how are they ever going to get out of this? So I'm going to add this. Again, it may not make it into the final source sheet, but I think it's um, an interesting thing to talk about. Okay, so here, this one doesn't interest me as much because it's just kind of saying, we told you so. It's sort of just a continuation of the complaints here. So I'm going to skip that one for now. And let's go to what Moses' answer. Have no fear, stand by and witness the deliverance which the divine will work for you today. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you will never see again. Okay, what do our commentators have to say about this? Rashi, okay, more grammar, not so interesting. Ibn Ezra, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. Um, okay, so this is commenting on the kind of mindset. Um, I don't know. I'm going to add this to the sheet, but I'm a little bit doubtful that I'm going to use it. What I do is I add a bunch of sources and then I kind of look at them and I'm actually trying to construct a story and an argument. I'm trying to guide people in a conversation towards certain things that I have in mind. However, that doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to end up where I thought it would. But by having kind of a path that's laid out, it's a backup. If things don't work out well, if people aren't talking a lot, I have a story that I can tell to kind of help people along. And people may agree with it, they may disagree with it. But again, this is how I think about it. Okay, so another source that we can look at, and I'm still interested in this four groups thing. And how the people were divided into four groups. So let's see. One of the references in the small print above was to the Talmud, was to actually the Jerusalem Talmud. So let's see what it had to say. Oh, and here it is. Our forefathers formed four factions. One said, "Let us just fall into the sea." Another said, "Let's go back to Egypt." Another said, "Let's fight." And another said, "Let's shout." And here is was Moses's answer. Um, okay, so let's add this to the sheet. That's kind of an interesting answer because it's getting into this idea of the four groups. Let's see what the other Talmuds had to say. Okay, so this was from a conversation about don't go back to Egypt, and it is referencing probably this Torah verse. Okay, this is like some weird stuff about I don't even know what, but it's clearly not connected to what I was thinking about. Megillah, the scroll of Esther. Okay, this is again not interesting to me. What about in the commentary? Are there other commentators that we might want to look at? Again, I'm looking for something about these four groups. Okay, I'm skipping all of these because they're only in Hebrew. And so my Hebrew is not really good enough to read it and I could certainly take my time and translate it word by word, but that's not particularly healthy. Healthy. Okay. Or Chaim, what does he have to say? Um, all right. So he's seems to have a little bit of an agenda. He's like, stand still and see. And this guy's saying this is really about prayer. Moses was telling people to pray some more. Well, maybe, maybe not, but it's not really. Maybe that's interesting. It's not so interesting to me. Um, uh, these are, kind of micro dissecting what Pharaoh was up to, his posture. I'm just not interested in that kind of reasoning. Um, Rav Hirsch, he's a really interesting commentator, but they always say it's in English, but it's in German. So my friend Rabbi Daniel could read that, but I cannot. So we'll keep going. There's one rabbi that I like, um, but I don't see him here. Women's Torah Commentary, what do they have to say? Okay, not super interesting. Huh, there was something I saw somewhere by Rabbeinu Bahya, um, but it's not on this one. It's not on that one. All right, what did he have to say? What do you have to say about this original one? Okay, so it's more about um, the tense, Pharaoh being uh, having to approach this. Oh, here it's saying he became the architect of his own destruction. That's kind of what that um, has to say. Um, so we'll add this to the sheet. Again, I would have to really cut this down quite a bit, but he is it's a it's different interpretations of just what we're seeing is a bunch of different interpretations, just this one single word and the implications. All right. Um, so I think that's quite a bit. We've gotten more than enough that we could talk about here. We have seen commentary. So let's take a look. Let's see what we have. Okay, we refresh. Let's see if we have enough of a story here. So when Pharaoh let Moses go, they had to go the roundabout way. And then God tells Moses to go back to this spot right next to the Sea of Reeds. And because that's going to induce Pharaoh to go chase them. And I'm going to make Pharaoh once again really stubborn and try to get revenge. And so Pharaoh got all these chariots and stuff together. And then um, the Israelites got frightened and cried out to God. And then they started complaining. They cried to God for help and they complained to Moses. And so why is that the case? And Moses says, "Don't worry, have no fear. Witness the deliverance, which the divine will work for you." And we know that's going to be the splitting of the Red Sea, the big Cecil B. DeMille moment. Okay, so let's look at some commentators. Well, first, there Rashi kind of notices this yud that's in this unusual form of the verb. So he was caused to come near in some way. Okay, I like that. Here's another commentary on this verb. Um, Maybe it's he caused his camp to draw near. Then there's this big long, this was the really big Ramban. Um, this is where he introduced this idea that there were two groups. There was conflict amongst the Israelites. Okay. So I'll read this in more detail and decide if there's anything else that I want to include. Um, and then there was this reference to Psalms where it's like here the psalmist is going back and talking about you rebelled at the Sea of Reeds. So I might, before the final source sheet, I might go back and look at the psalm and see if there's more that we want to say. Um, but even though you rebelled, um, you were saved. So this is kind of this little psalm interlude. So that might be interesting to include as a commentary. Um, okay, and some of these I would change the order. Like this is again, we're under siege with our backs up against the wall. Um, here's more about um, this is like, why didn't they fight? Well, they were trained from their youth to fear the yoke of the Egyptians. So I think this is kind of interesting. It's again getting to the psychology of this group. And so um, I like that. And then here's the explicit discussion of the four factions. I think we could have a really interesting conversation about when there's a panic and when times are tough and stressful, people react differently. And I like that for right now because times are really, really stressful. There's all this strife going on in the country. We just got the last hostage back from Hamas this week. Um, so we've kind of see divisions in the Jewish community. So might be interesting to dig into these four groups. And then this this I might move up um, to talk about like just this little snippet up by the Rashi to kind of talk about the differences. And we might have a whole conversation again about this Hebrew word. And then here it's bringing in all kinds of other, you know, talking about Haman and different other times that this word was used. Here's other times that praying was going on. So I think I'm just going to probably cut all of this out and I'll probably move this up. And I think I'll probably plan to stop the Torah study with this last one. Anyway, that's where we are from Torah Tuesday. You have seen it here, how I go about creating a source sheet. Please leave a comment below. And if you would like to participate in the Torah study, please go. I'll put a link where you can sign up for the email list to do so. Have a great week.